3PNR with Adam R. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R., and joining me again is Tony Sivalelli. Tony, how you doing, sir?
Good, Adam. How have you been? How's the summer been so far?
Summer was good. I shot pool. I did a lot of nothing, which I wanted to do. It was just some nothing, no research. Florida, for the most part, sunny and hot, beautiful here, for the most part. But when we do have rain, it's basically a hurricane. How was your summer so far?
So far, so good. I've taken a bit of a break from the paranormal, except for teaching some of the remote viewing classes and workshops. The weather's been good here. Knock on wood. It's in Michigan, Metro Detroit area. I'm also a bit of a baseball geek, so I've been able to enjoy some of that with some of the local teams. And still working part-time also in the health food supplement industry, as well as teaching remote viewing. So keeping busy, but also finding time to take breaks. I think that's very necessary for everybody. You're better off maybe doing a little too less, like I always say with personal training, than doing too much, because it's always easier to recover and you don't have to suffer from burnout.
Agreed. And I was at a level of burnout because I was, prior to taking a break, I'm reading so many facts. I've met so many interesting people. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. But my brain was overwhelmed and I was losing sleep at night and I wasn't functioning correctly. So it was a good thing for me to go shoot pool again, be social, get outdoors. And then as I come back to this, I'm approaching it differently this year. I'm going to be a little more invasive on how I research things. The first year I really just absorbed, right? I had good guests on and I just absorbed good information. Now it's time for me to dig. So I want to know more. You know what I mean? I want to, ultimately I want answers to the big questions for me anyway.
Right.
But for you,
I get that. I think to start that with a fresh frame of mind, and you said you perhaps were a little burnt. I think a lot of people get into that situation, whether it's a combination of work and or responsibilities, activities, exercise, all the different things that people partake in. It's easy for that situation to occur in today's world, and I always let people know, take a step back. Relax. There's that book by, I think his name is Alex Pang, to rest, deliberate rest. And some of the most successful people have found out that is definitely a way to go. So I understand with what you're talking about. I'm glad to hear you did it. I think it'll do wonders and can do a lot for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. Now we were talking, pre-podcast, I was talking about my supplements, right? I take a lot. I take vitamin C, ginkgo, E, B12, D3, A, DHEA, zinc. Omega-3s. I take a lot. And I've been doing a little research because ultimately it's for cognitive. It really that's the goal. Like we were discussing that, especially when you're a pool player, or especially when you're doing research. Your brain is the most important part of all of those things. So I'm trying to simplify it. And I've been doing my own, due diligence. I found a pretty good high-end multivitamin so I could stop popping. Like, I don't know. I think I take like 14 morning supplements, about 3 midday, which I just took, and then about another 4 at dinner time. It's just to get.
Adam, I understand. I work in that industry and have been, I've been on that train for a while as a competitive bodybuilder, many years ago. I also looked into supplements extensively, and I still take some today, but I'm like you. I've gotten to the point where I've had to simplify it a little bit more. I think, a lot of things in my research and time with this and talking to many people and working with many different people, whether it's professional athletes, amateur athletes, grandparents, younger teenagers, etc. I've worked with all kinds in the health food industry and personal training regime. I think, in my opinion, a lot of what is said with supplements is just basically to promote supplements. I'm not saying not to use them. I'm saying to use them, but maybe supplement. That's the key word with supplements. They are a supplement. I'm a firm believer in eating well with the foods that your body can tolerate, most best, because there's different ways to look at that, blood types, genetic dispositions, et cetera, et cetera. But once you find quality foods, stick with them in a fairly regular program and maybe rotate and add your supplements in there. I have what I call the spinach rule. I'll ask you a question, Adam. Do you think spinach is good for you?
Uh, you know, it's accepted mainstream.
Yes.
I don't like spinach personally.
Okay, broccoli. Do you think broccoli's good for you?
Yes.
Any of these vegetables?
Yes, those greens I do.
I think they all are, but I don't think you have to consume them every day. If you
Right.
consume them 2 or 3 times a week, same thing with blueberries, same things with, almond butter, and the list goes on and on. Your body is smart enough to reap the benefits from this. You can't consume all these foods every day. And I think the body adapts. I honestly believe that. I think if going without them is not good, but going with them on a semi-regular basis, in my opinion, can be applied. That same principle can be applied to a lot of the supplements we take, especially the fat-soluble supplements like vitamin D3. I mean, some people just get a pill and they take it once a week or once a month, and instead of 2,000 units a day, they just take it, 25,000 units at one time, and the body can store that. All the fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are all like that. Vitamin C's and B's are a little different. You urinate out the excess, but you need to get a lot of those from your fruits and vegetables as well. So I think there's a lot of rotating and going back and forth. And I think instead of looking at it in terms of what have I done each day, I really believe people can say, what have I done each week? And see what the body is going to absorb and utilize most effectively.
I agree, and I'm a bit of a creature of habit too, Tony. I have 3 hard-boiled eggs every morning. I have oatmeal. It's an apple oatmeal. I like apple oatmeal.
I understand. I do the same. Mine's 2 or 3 eggs with oatmeal as well. Go on.
And then it's strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. I love berries. And so I'll eat a very big first meal. Right. And I'll take my supplements. And, for midday, I don't have lunch. I'll snack an apple or a granola bar, depending on what I prefer that day. And then I'll have like a heavy protein dinner, and then I'll have my supplements for evening. Okay. But I want to get away. I've been doing that, Tony, since I'm a kid. I got to change
your body is adapted to that.
Yeah. So
I can do the same thing with supplements, sir.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of research. I found, I don't know. Here, I'll give you this company name. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before. It is called. Well, I got a laundry list of stuff on this. This
Life Extension. I mean, there's so many companies.
Performance Lab is this one.
Okay.
And it's at 3 months. It's $147 for a multivitamin. But to me, at first I was like, that sounds like a lot. But then when you do the math on what I spend on all the individual supplements, and I mean a lot. It blows that number away. That number It doesn't even pale in comparison. So
I like the track that you're on. I really believe that. And then I think if you can adapt a little bit of the, as I call it, the spinach idea, where you don't have to have everything every day, your body will adapt and keep those nutrients around. It can store things, it can adapt to using things. There's a lot to this. I mean, it's like every cell in your body has, I guess you could call it, some type of an intelligence to it. I mean, these things, you got these little bacteria, your probiotics in your system, in your gut, etc. They communicate, they create a microbiome. There's so much going on, and your body is so adaptive to what goes on. So if you can gradually cut back on a few things, use that spinach rule type of thing that I talked about, where everything doesn't have to be taken quite every day, I think your body will adapt and utilize those nutrients just as well. The body does that very well. It adapts.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, so here's another thing I noticed myself too. If I eat, like, let's say I go out and get a fast food burger somewhere, I immediately know that happened. Immediately. I could feel it. I could feel lethargic right after.
Right.
It's sad because there's there's that love for cheeseburgers, which I have. I love cheeseburgers, but I try not to eat it daily. So, a lot of it's discipline, and I'm a pretty, for the most part, disciplined person. Like, I don't really crave sugars or snacks or stuff like that. I mean, believe it or not, my favorite snack's hummus.
Yeah, that sounds great. Maybe you're having a few different types of chips that are more on the healthier side of chips with it. I like your idea of discipline. That's very important. coming from a person that's in the nutrition field, I have a rule that I just call it like the 75-25 rule or 80-20 rule. Eat well 80% of the time. And I like your idea of a cheeseburger every so often, no matter how many times a week it is, 3 or 4 or whatever, or 2 or 3. This way, you can't be like, that old adage, the boy in the plastic bubble, where you start eating outside of your comfort zone and you can't digest anything. I mean,
Right.
then you can't go anywhere. You can't, be involved with different people at different locations. It's so hard. I mean, I know people can make those adjustments and do those things, but I think if you eat a little bit off, some of the time, your body will be more able to deal with more different types of foods. Now, I'm not saying add chemicals to your diet and eat bad things, because obviously a lot of your listeners and your followers are saying, well, what is he saying? He works in the nutrition field. I'm still saying the 80-20 rule, but I think it's good to break away every so often, even if it's just like once a week on a Sunday. Eat what you like in moderation, so you don't go stir crazy, or you just don't quit the program. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 steps forward, 1 back, and you just get better health and more physiological, better responses by doing it that way, as opposed to just going cold turkey. I truly am not a believer in overdoing anything anymore. And I used to kind of overdo it, 20, 30 years ago.
I agree with you. I had a friend of mine on the show a few times, Alfie Crescentini, and I known him for years. He's an executive chef.
Right.
At some point in his life, he ended up having a Black Widow heart attack. So he changed his diet. He's, an all vegetable diet. And it works for him. He's dropped weight. He's healthier. But even he says diets just don't work, especially if you're going to try to discipline. Like, no one on this planet is going to eat the same diet 7 days a week. You need to have that little treat. It gives you incentive, right? You're working hard. It's like that work hard, play hard. Same kind of, concept. But this is something spread out.
Part of the spice of life, variety.
Right. And I see what you mean. It's not a good thing to eat the same thing or do the same thing every day, because in your body, it's like not being exposed to viruses, for example.
Right. Exactly. Great point. I think you could do it 80% of the time.
Right.
For some people, it might be 85. Some people, it might be 75. But break it here and there and change it a little bit here and there. But you're staying on it 80% of the time, per se.
And my goal is really cognitive. Because, especially like when doing research, I watch, I don't know, countless amount of documentaries. I read a lot of material. And then I shoot pool. And a lot of, again, that's very mental, all of that. It's a cognitive existence. So a lot of my diet has something to do with that. And I've been taking Alpha Brain for years. I learned about Alpha before I even watched Joe Rogan. I learned about Alpha Brain because years ago, and I'm not going to name names, but a lot of people in my circle are utilizing Adderall for focus purposes, right? And I used it myself, and I just hated the way I felt the next day. I'm one of these people. I don't like not feeling in control of myself. I don't like feeling like I'm being drugged to the mud. So I eventually did some research at that time and found supplements. And look, nothing natural is going to compare to Adderall. It's amphetamine. It's powerful, but I found for me anyway, my personal use is I was using Alpha Brain, L-theanine in concert with caffeine. When I really, like, let's say I wanted to be competitive at shoot pool, I would use the Alpha Brain, the L-theanine, and like a caffeine product to get me through that time, and it was natural. I didn't feel like shit the next day.
Right.
That was my goal, to not have something. I hate the idea of chemicals in my body.
Well, I mean, I commend your efforts and your research and your time. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are like that. I mean, phosphatidylserine, and there's other things that are, good for focus and mental development and all that stuff. I mean, there's definitely nutrition. I mean, that's a big part of it. Staying hydrated is huge. And hydration, especially during the summer months, is a little trickier than people think. It's more than just drinking water. I personally believe there has to be a proper electrolyte balance with sodium and potassium and a little bit of magnesium. But those things are just as important as the water, because if you're not taking in the correct amount of electrolytes, you're not going to pull the water into those cells effectively, and you're just going to keep urinating most of it out, and that still could be a dehydrated person.
Yeah, you could have crash moments too, right? Because I drink a lot of water. I don't drink soda. I drink pomegranate juice, but only a glass of it, in rotation, because every day, builds up acidity. For me anyway, builds up acidity.
Sure. Absolutely.
So yeah, I've learned to alter a lot of it. I just drink. I like water. I don't like.
What you could do is just take a pinch of sea salt and then put a tablespoon of pomegranate and put that in, 8 ounces of cool water or 6 ounces of cool water, stir it up, and that's a good electrolyte mix there.
It's a good idea. So now
You don't
I
have to,
like
it
that.
doesn't have to be the juices straight all the time. Dilute them with the water or quality water, put a pinch of salt in there, and then you've got your electrolytes to go with your hydration.
Smart waters. What is that? What are they using that? I think you're right. I think they use sodium.
Well, most of these alkaline waters that are on the market right now, Adam, they have added sodium and some potassium and some magnesium, and that's what gives the alkalinity to it. Like 7 is neutral, and anything under that is acidic. And then you've got these waters that are 8, 9, 10, pH levels, and that depends on the amount, parts per hydrogen is the pH, parts per hydrogen is the amount that they put in of the minerals creates the alkalinity level of the number, whether it's 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever.
Huh. See, and that's these are important things to learn. I mean, this is why I like talking to people about these things and learning, because I definitely spend countless hours researching that too. I'm always looking for what can I use. Like, again, that brings me back to the multivitamin. This is why I'm doing it, because I'm got sick and tired of. I mean, Tony, I'll send you a picture. Fistfuls of supplements every day, and you just get, especially when you want to shoot pool in the morning.
I hear it all the time.
Oh my God. When I got to shoot pool in the morning, it's a chore because I got to take my supplements. And then I also like using Alpha Brain to keep me, leveled and focused.
Sure.
My L-theanine, by the end of that whole thing, you're taking so many pills. Like, and then there's that question, am I really absorbing all this? I think I'm overwhelming the machine and maybe my body's pushing some aside.
And sometimes it's good, Adam, to alternate. I mean, I'll give your listeners a little bit of a tidbit here. Again, I've been in this industry for a while. I learn and remember things every day as well. But I noticed that things like, relaxing or winding down, a lot of people have trouble sleeping at night. And they're like, well, I take melatonin. And I'll ask them, how long have you been taking it? And they'll say, I've been taking it for 4 months or 5 months or 3 months. The best way to do, for instance, these type of sleep type of supplements or relaxation supplements is to alternate them. What you do is you take one for 2 to 3 weeks, like melatonin, whether it's 1 milligram or 3 to 5 milligrams a night. And then after you're done with that for 2 or 3 weeks, you take a day or two off, and then you move on to the next product. It might be L-theanine for 2 or 3 weeks. Then you move on to another product. It might be something like GABA, which is good for brain relaxation, or lemon balm, or, you can throw some ashwagandha in there. The key is to rotate. And you know why? Because your body builds up a tolerance level. Your cells are smart. The product will only work for so long. Then you move on to another product for 3 weeks. Then you move on to another product for 3 weeks. Have 3 things that you can alternate.
I guess people should view this. Here's how people.
This way it's like it's new each time you take it.
Right.
Continually work. Does that make sense?
It does, and I do that. I will rotate. So I won't take the Alpha Brain every time. I even got Mind Lab Pro. I mean, I just try to. I don't want to take something that the company's like, well, you got to take this every day for it to work. Well, if I got to take it every day to work, eventually my body, like you just said, it's going to build an immunity to it.
Absolutely.
So I like to treat supplements, well, cognitive supplements anyway. I like to treat cognitive supplements like. Listen, drug addicts, after a while, they'll do drugs until it's not good enough. They got to do more. Right. It's the same idea. It's eventually your body's going to be like, well, I'm not getting high anymore. Got to get to the next level. And that's when you get in trouble and obviously get into worse stuff. But supplements are the same, especially cognitive ones.
I agree. Cognitive and restful sleep ones are very smart, pun intended, to alternate. Not every day something new, but for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, then take a day or two off, try the next one. This way, each time you go back to it, and you have 2 or 3 things, at least 3 things that you're alternating with, your body's starting over again, and it'll have that new effect again.
Agreed. So prior to podcast, we were talking about the idea of remote viewing courses.
Yes.
And, you've been on the show. I'm sure they'll remember, but just kind of remind people of your background in it and how you think you want to structure these courses.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking, Adam. My background, instead of going into it too far, you can definitely go back to your podcast and 1 or 2, especially the first one that I was on. You can get a lot of the history of remote viewing, the actual, history with the people involved. I talked about that extensively. The players involved, etc., that went back into the early 1970s out of Stanford Research Institute, out of California. And then they hooked up with the military after that. It was ran by people like Professor Russell Targ and others that were, a big part of that. And then, the military got involved in the psychic spies, and a lot of your listeners know the history of that. But again, to go back to the first one or two episodes that we talked about, and Hal Puthoff was the other big name I was looking at, and also Ingo Swann was involved, a psychic from New York who was also an artist. And they brought him out from New York to the West Coast, and they developed these protocols and phases that went from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind to pen to paper, and they produced psychic-like results. And then the military was dabbling into it a little bit, coinciding with that, but not knowing. But then Stanford Research Institute was also a think tank for various corporations, and the military was one of them. And the intelligence community got wind of that, and they approached them. And they put together a program. They brought people in and out of the program, and it went on for 20, 22, 23 years under various names: Project Grill Flame, Stargate, Center Lane. And that was the era of Sci-Spies and psychic Sci-Spies, and that was born. And then in the early 90s, it started to leak out in the general populace. And the History Channel got wind of it, and they approached the group and said they thought this was pretty fascinating. The militaries were working with psychic and psychic phenomena, and they eventually agreed that they could do a documentary on it. And then I saw this documentary, and then it was on the History Channel, and a fellow by the name of James Schnabel wrote a book about it, Remote Viewers, The Secret History of America's Psychic Spies. And from there, I went and learned this because I was into the whole UFO idea and not of this earth intelligences as I describe it. And I went and took courses at the Farsight Institute to learn scientific remote viewing. And the professor there was Courtney Brown, and he was the lead instructor there along with some of the other instructors. And I learned scientific remote viewing. And then I went to the Monroe Institute and learned the out-of-body experience idea. That was in Faber, Virginia. The Farsight was in Atlanta, Georgia. And I went back to the Monroe Institute again in 98 and learned more about the out-of-body experience. I learned that the Monroe Institute was a prerequisite for the military remote viewers as well, because they both, remote viewing and the start of the out-of-body experience, are processes that allow people to gain information from taste, sight, touch, sound, and smell without being there firsthand, and bringing that back and recording it from the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, to pen to paper. And so I learned scientific remote viewing, and then I went back in 2002 and began understanding the courses even better, and learned more about it. I started teaching it right after that. You get certified as an instructor, and I've been doing so on and off ever since 2002. And so lately I've gotten back into it the last couple of years, even more so, especially with remote work having to come into play. And so I developed a website along with my web designer, and we put that together. It's learnremoteviewing.net. And what I wanted to do, Adam, with you and some of your followers, your listeners, is put together a program, a workshop for your particular group, to get anywhere from up to maybe, like we talked about it, 5-6 people involved, that we could do a group Zoom workshop with them. And we can do 2-hour classes, 3 2-hour classes. And we're going to look at this as potentially like scheduling it maybe November. I believe you mentioned the 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th, 3 consecutive Thursdays from like 8 to 10 p.m. at night, Eastern Standard Time. And by the time your listeners or followers, the ones who decide to take this course live with you and I on Zoom, they're going to learn basic scientific remote viewing phases 1 through 3, where they'll be able to identify targets that we send them to. They'll be blind to these targets. They'll learn how to go through the protocols and phases, and I'll be right there every step of the way teaching it. And you'll have the targets. It'll all be done live, and they'll learn phases 1 through 3. And if they want to take it further after that to finish, if they want, phases 4 and 5, they can do that with me, a one-on-one type of thing, because it gets a little more intricate with it. But phases 1 through 3 will teach your followers or anybody who learns remote viewing how to work and identify a target and take you to a target. And we'll go through all that with them as we go through these classes. The big thing with remote viewing is, you learn how to do remote viewing, but we were talking about cognitive ability and all that type of thing earlier. This will help anybody, in my opinion, and all instructors of remote viewing opinions, to help them learn more to gain a discipline so the people can become more intuitive in their day-to-day life. They'll learn more about their sixth sense, their gut feelings. They'll be able to follow that. They'll be able to notice more synchronicity in their life. All these things that are already there, this type of program and this type of training will allow people to become more aware of them, and they can use it for whatever they want in their life, whether it's work-wise or making decisions business-wise, or when you're working with people. It'll allow that person to get that neural network going and make that intricate, delicate connection that it comes from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind a little bit more effectively, but it will also allow the person to become more aware.
Also competitively, and I say this because I imagine anyway, before, and I haven't taken the class yet and can't wait to do it, but with remote viewing, it requires a lot of not just cognitive focus, but meditative focus, right?
Yes, we will meditate before each class. Even if we just close our eyes, I'll read like an SRV affirmation. We'll do a short meditation. It's just quieting the mind, and it allows people to relax, quiet the mind, and allow the information to flow to them. You don't force anything. You just open up. It's like a sixth sense, so to speak, and you let this data flow to and through you. And more often than not, if people get through the phases of it, they kind of surprise themselves at some point that how they can get this information and not knowing consciously anything about a target, and yet bring back this information. So it opens a person up to that other big area, that they are more than just a physical body, that there is some type of a connection with a neural network, within themselves and all the energies around them. It's like the old double slit experiment that they did when they split the electron up, and they put it through two different slits, and then once the electron went through the two slits, it came back together. When they knew there had to be some type of communication between the two halves of the electron, which is part of the atom, the protons, neutrons, electrons, and it goes into the guts of it even more with quarks, gluons, plasma, and all that stuff in the string theory and all that physics stuff. But more in a layman's way, there's some type of aspect of us that's not just physical, and that we're all connected. And there's been studies on different things like this too. People have looked at it for many, many years, whether it's twins and twin telepathy, and Guy Lynn Playfair, who wrote a book about it. There's some type of a connection that we can make, and that we are more part of a universal collective consciousness, back to Jung and his theories and things like that.
Well, a couple of things, right? There's a couple of things here. So people that are afraid of meditation, a lot of people are, because like, I just can't meditate. I'm one of those people myself. I'm like, I just can't meditate, but that's not true. Like when you're shooting pool, or you're an athlete, and you get into this so-called zone, you're hyper meditating. You're fixated. You're hyper focused. That's a form of meditation. Two, key thing for people to understand. When you're utilizing anything to, like whether it be a supplement or meditation or whatever you're doing for a cognitive outcome, even if people take this course and they're learning remote viewing, at the end of the day, if they don't get it right away, which I don't expect everyone to do so.
No, of course not.
They will emerge learning something new about their ability to like you were saying, about their self-awareness, the energy within. There's definitely an energy within us. They
are going to learn, and it's going to come to them even if they don't do well with targets. It's kind of like giving a person a map. Once you have that map and you look at that, then you can know where you're going. Your brain acts the same way. You got your different brainwave states and all those different things that go on, everything from your delta and your sleeping, your theta, which is your hypnagogic, and then you got your alphas, your daydreaming, and your beta, your waking state. And this will allow some transference of like theta brainwave state to the beta brainwave state. So you're getting that information from that meditative hypnagogic type of state. And even if you don't get the targets, now your brain has a working structure. That's why it's called scientific remote viewing. That's why it was put together out of Stanford Research Institute. That's why the military spent millions and millions of dollars on this type of thing, because it can and does work. But all the person that has to do when they're participating is just relax. The real extensive focus, like you talked about, that comes a little bit later on. But if I can just get people to relax if they're afraid to meditate and just let information come to them, and that's my job, and just to quiet the mind and let the data flow, information does come along. You will make some things up, and there's a way to deal with that. It's called deductions, but you're going to get information as well. And this opens up a person to a whole new avenue. It's like giving your brain, your eyes, a new map. And then even though you will or will not do well with some of the targets, that's not what the goal is. The goal is the person starts opening this pathway up in their brain, and they start exercising it. And then it starts to take place in their day-to-day life. They will become more aware of the gut feeling, the sixth sense, the intuition.
You know who you hear that from a lot are CEOs. A lot of big CEOs, a lot of successful people, even Michael Jordan. And I keep talking about that show, The Last Dance. Have you watched that, The Last Dance? You got to watch it, Tony.
I know that, and I remember that. It's on my bucket list.
That guy mentally goes places for games that if it's not an outer body experience, I don't know how to explain it. Like he had food poisoning, and he went to a game sick. He was sick. I mean, I've had food poisoning just recently. I was just in June, and I was down for a week. This guy next day in a game plays and outscores his opponent. That's an example of leaving your physical self and getting to that next level. And then so when you hear Jordan say that, and then like there's some pool players like Shane Van Bonen, Fedor Gore, some of these pool players that are out there that are really high-end pool players, even Jason Shaw, say things like when they get in those zones, what it's like. And a lot of them in description, it's like they're not even in their own body. It's like something takes over. And then that same thing for boxers. I hear this from boxers. So when you hear this pattern and then you apply it to what you're trying to teach people, I want people to understand remote viewing is not just something you do to go see something, right? You're also becoming one with yourself. You're learning how to get to another level, which is the reason why I'm interested in it. I want to get to that next level.
Cognitive ability.
Right. Because if I could harness that to do something that much greater, there's limitless possibilities after that.
Yes, that can be true. It's up to the person to what level they want. I'm just going to make it to where it's a procedure. It's down on paper. People will get their manuals. They will get additional targets after if they want to practice on their own with me verbally walking them through. I mean, there'll be a lot to get out of the program. We're going to look at it and do it in 3 different sessions of 2 hours, and it won't be 2 straight hours. There'll be a break in each one, a short break in each one, but we're going to learn the process. We're going to view some targets, and then they're going to get enough things out of this to be able to do it on their own. And my audio will be able to guide them, but there's always additional classes if they want to do it with me and take it to the next level. That's up to the person, but I just want to get people to open up intuition, cognitive ability, focus, memory, increase that awareness of synchronicity, all those things that can come with it. It's one of those things where we can talk about things and talk about this subject and talk about that subject, but let's do something to where people get to participate a little bit and maybe perhaps enhance their own being, so to speak, by participating.
Yeah. And for people that want to, like for listeners that, because this is November, like the first 2 weeks of November is ample time for listeners that want to do it. Say something in the comments, mention it, supply an email, and or if you're on Spotify, Apple, I will in this episode, I'll put up an email for the podcast. You can reach out to me, or you got Tony's. I'll also put Tony's website in the description as well, because right. For people that want to do it. So Tony, from that point, let's move on to this. I
do want to say one more thing. It
Sure.
will be reduced. There's a group price on there, $149. It will be reduced for your listeners even a little bit further. So it'll be a little less. So when we do this group workshop with 3 PNR, everybody will get a little bit more of a savings. And any questions with it, please, www.learnremoteviewing.com. net. It's simple. Just let me know or let Adam know. And, we want to get, a half a dozen people maybe involved in this and take it from there.
Yeah, it'd be a good study, a good thing for people to learn. So yeah, if with the discount again for 3PNR, if you're emailing Tony or me, just make sure you highlight it. You learned it through 3PNR itself. Tony, the news. What in your opinion, what is going on? Because I'm officially lost. I took a month away from watching news. I didn't look at social media. When I took that summer break, Tony, I took a break. I wanted to know nothing. And now I'm hearing like China's looking at Taiwan, for I don't know what their goal is. I didn't even think Russia and the Ukraine thing would still be going on. I thought by now it would be resolved, but clearly not. So is this in your opinion, is this event, is this like a reoccurring thing in humanity?
Well, I've kind of taken a break myself, just like you did. And like I mentioned when we first came on here, I'm not versed enough to really make comments right now about world situations. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about current, maybe potential UFO situations.
Yeah.
You probably know, or will have better guests on than me to make those things. But I do think everything is cyclical. Maybe you get different people with different ideas, different opinions about everything. Is some things orchestrated, perhaps? I don't try to get into all those things. I think I'm here, and I'm here to help people who want to develop their selves, their being, and better themselves, and remember more of who and what they are, and perhaps connected to. There's always, I think, Adam, going to be situations going on in the world that are challenges. Maybe not as much as there used to be, but maybe in a different way of doing so now. Maybe it's still violent, but it's not as violent as it once was when you look at the past world wars and all the different things that humanity went through. But now it's more through technology and things like that. I think the whole idea of UFOs is being put out there pretty extensively, whether it's the things that the Navy released and whether they are actual ET crafts or time travel crafts or high-level black budget crafts. I mean, and maybe it's a combination, in my opinion, of all of the above, that are been UFOs throughout the history of humanity. But now I think there is a push in the general populace area to get this idea out there. We're traveling in space. We've got Elon Musk. You've got different people with different ideas about what they would like to do. Are we even welcome in space? That type of idea we have to look at. So I think there's a lot of things going on, but this whole idea of ETs, dimensionals, time travelers, and don't forget, black budget projects. They're a big part of this, and just basically hoaxes too. All of the above have probably been going on for some time now. And so it makes kind of in my opinion, my humble opinion, it makes kind of a scramble. I'm not sure. We're not sure. A lot of people are not sure. They're on the fence about this whole thing. I just think the whole idea of ETs, time travelers, dimensionals, and others with different motives have been going on since the beginning of time. And I think that beginning of time with humanity has many different cycles that have come and gone off the face of this planet. But that's just my humble opinion. And looking at this and researching it, doing remote viewing, going to conferences for 20 years, talking to so many different researchers, experiencers, my own situations with it, my own projects with it. And that's why I put a lot of that together in the book, Ambassadors to the Stars. I believe, Adam, there is a slow indoctrination process that's going on. So each subsequent generation will be more open to the idea of what I call not of this earth intelligences. And right now we are still in that gray area where you just can't go from, yes, this is going on one night, or it's not going on one night. Sorry. It's not going on till, yes, it is the next day. You got to go through a gray period of several generations of maybe this is going on. So again, each subsequent generation is a little bit more open to this idea than the most previous.
I agree. And all that being said, so let's say, and I had a friend of mine kind of approached me about this because he found I was doing a podcast. We had this discussion. He's like, listen, you ever think that the government's not fully releasing or hasn't been releasing information on UFOs because it's a great scapegoat for them? So there's actual UFOs flying around, which means they could fly their testing things out and they could blame the UFOs every time.
Sure.
If they ever flew over, when he said this, I laughed at first, but then I realized that he's onto something. If we want to do reconnaissance over, say, Russia or China or these other places, blame the UFOs. Clearly, that's UFO.
Yeah, UFOs. Yeah, you're right, Adam. Maybe they've been exploited since the beginning of time, and part of it is, government thinking, religious factions, all kinds of things could use UFOs to their advantage and saying, well, it was this or it was that. Or it's a combination. It's such a big box to open. I mean, it's just, and that's why I've kind of even got backed off of that. I mean, in my opinion, it's been going on. It is going on, but a lot of it is mis and disinformation as well. But that's why I've just gotten more into the whole idea of consciousness and that we're all connected to a universal creative source playing itself out in countless incarnations and divvying itself up. We're kind of like all small sparks of divinity playing itself out with like a veil that we go through, and others are maybe further down the line than we are in terms of time space continuum, and other dimensions may not have time space like we do, and so they can kind of help orchestrate things below or in the lower dimensions. We may have cousins that are similar to us, five head, two arms, two legs, that might be strewn throughout this particular immediate dimensional galaxy. I think there's a lot going on, but there's also a lot of mis and disinformation and other budget programs and trying things out and experiments. And, I think the general populace is always maybe a couple decades at least behind on what's really going on in terms of data and technology and things like that. But I don't think about it that much anymore. I'm not here to change the way the world is working at all. I just think people can help themselves become more and understand who and what they are and connected to, and have that peace, that type of thing, and learn, the meditations, remote viewing as an exercise to prove and to help better oneself and help in different ways.
Agreed. Especially with people, again, getting to a new level of consciousness, especially there.
That's going to be the key. That's going to unravel all of it. It's up to us. When we as a group consciousness move forward, when we take that next step, that next precipice, as we get into that area, then we'll have that effect to where globally it takes place.
Well, I got a question. When you're out of body, I guess this is a tough question. Do you look like you? That's a good question. I have had that question asked me several times. I think there's different levels in terms of frequencies of where you can go when it's called out of body. I'll tell you once I took the Monroe Institute courses, and then it's like that map. Then all of a sudden you can start understanding this stuff better. There's a couple different types of processes, in my opinion, of out of body. Remote viewing is not quite an out of body experience. I think it's like an antenna where you bring data in. It's like that electron double slit experiment interface that we can. So kind of like a download.
Back and forth. Yeah, and it is. It's opening the network so you can connect with that, quieting your mind. The out-of-body experience, in my opinion, and this is just my simple opinion and just my experience with it, and there's others that have done much more. But in my opinion and the experiences I've had astral, where you can actually see your physical self, and then you're kind of like in the area where you can see the stairs. At the Monroe Institute, I was kind of like gliding back and forth because I was in the second story of the building at the Monroe Center there, and you come flying through and up and down the stairs, and all of a sudden you're back in your body. My more recent out-of-body experiences, the ones that I can remember, and this is what goes on, is I'll be sleeping, and then all of a sudden there's like a movement, and like my whole body is moving, but it concentrates like in my upper area of the head type of thing, where you have like it's going around in circles, like it's swirling around, like you're on one of those small tilt-a-whirls, like are on kids' playgrounds, where you're spinning and spinning. It's almost like your frequency is changing. And I think when I do this, and I've come to this conclusion, I'm not moving spatially or spatially anywhere, like from point A to point B. You're just tuning into another frequency. And it's so high, Adam, that the physical body can't comprehend it, and it can't actually stay with your being or that essence of who and what we are, that divine spark I talked about earlier. that's connected to a bigger network. Once that happens and you're moving really fast, but I'm not moving anywhere, I'm changing a frequency. Once that happens, your body just has to shut down. It's like a safety mechanism. It just has to sleep, and you just are out, but you're not physically looking at the things that are around you anymore, like an astral projection. You're in another whole frequency of existence. And in my opinion, time and space don't exist, from what I can comprehend and gather from this, like it does here or even on the astral plane. It's just different. It's a different frequency existence when it's not point A to point B anymore. That's why I think also the key to UFOs, I think J. Allen Hynek said it long ago, who worked on Project Blue Book, knew a lot, was with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He helped Spielberg put some of that together. He said, when we learn the keys to UFOs, it's going to be one hell of a quantum leap. And I think he meant quantum physics, and how we best describe it right now, because with physics, you've got energies, you've got propulsions, you've got changes, you've got gravity, you've got centrifugal forces, you have all these things going on. And it's not, once you get it extensively, it's not like how we understand and see things right in front of us right now in what I call our 3D world. So I think we have an aspect of us that lives or is the essence of us that's still connected more so on a greater plane of existence, that sometimes, or maybe often, maybe very often, just leaves, and we just sleep during this. We have to shut down as a safety mechanism, because our bodies, our minds even can't comprehend this.
Right. I'll say this too, because in my dreams of lately, I'm seeing myself from a third person, but a side profile. And I did a little research on why I'm dreaming that way. And I'm seeing myself, but it's never accurate. I know that much, because I feel like I have more of a youthful appearance in my dream. And I think they're calling that self-mental projection, right? So it's just your mind, your brain, the energy in your head, putting an image to what it is as being you. And I bring the point about, if we were to elevate our consciousness, right? And let's say, hypothetically speaking, a group of people of different backgrounds and ethnics, and they all project one another into one realm to congregate on the next level. Okay. Things like race don't matter there. Right?
You're right.
Things like religion don't matter there. Things like politics, none of the worldly stuff makes a difference in that realm. Per se. Right. It's only when we're here.
Yeah. And it might be needed here. This might be so complex, Adam, that, maybe it's just the way things are. I mean, maybe this whole thing is like, and believe me, there's pain, there's suffering, there's joy, there's starvation. There's a lot of these things that go on. And I know that. And I'm not, making it less than what it is. But maybe there just is a bigger picture. And like I always said, maybe it's kind of like, the body is viewed by the soul, like how the body goes to a play and watches actors on a stage. It's kind of like a relative, comparison. We go and watch a play, and, there's a good character, there's a bad character, there's a hero, this person gets killed, this person lives. And yet at the end of the play, the curtain closes, and then you open the curtain again, and there's everybody right there, all fine and happy, taking a bow. And that was the play, and what we call maybe an hour or two. Well, maybe in a relative way, our soul kind of experiences the body in the same way. And you actually need these things. I mean, I think there is, a lot of good to take out of many belief systems, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, et cetera, but you need these rainbow effects. You got to have yellow to appreciate blue. You got to have red to appreciate orange. You got to have black. You got to know up. You got to know down. You got to know warm. You got to have cold. You got to have all these things to measure by, to compare by. So anything can be anything. Because like what you said, there would be no religious, there would be no, like when you get to that projection of a higher state of self, there isn't that separation. But in order for that essence to experience anything, like I said before, playing itself out and all these divine sparks of divinity, you got to have all these ups and downs and lefts and rights and blues and grays and good and evil and all these things. And as crazy as it sounds, in my humble opinion, I feel that's the only way you can explain it. Because if it's just the simple religious beliefs of, oh, you're good and you do this, and you're bad and you do that, and that's it. You get one life. Some believe in reincarnation. You got all those differences. And like you just said, all those differences are set aside as we evolve and learn a greater state of consciousness and awareness. So maybe this place that we call the third dimension has its place in a bigger picture and plays itself out. And others from higher realms, I hate to say it, kind of use this as the theater effect and can come and go, maybe in incarnations with energies. Maybe we are like thumb drives. Remember the movie The Matrix? And maybe we can come and go out of a computer. Instead of taking a thumb drive, our essence, our energy comes in and makes this part of the play, and then does this part of the play. And then when we're done with those plays, we'll say, you know what, we want to go more to a group consciousness, a greater awareness, like you just talked about there, where there's not as much separation and difference. But there has to be something for the source to do. And it's a creative source, in my opinion. And maybe I'm way out there with this, and maybe I'm not. It has to divvy itself up into countless incarnations, dimensions, etc., and experiences, so anything can be anything. Because if not, then it's just going to be totally boredom, and that's not life. That's not creation. That's why this creative source is constantly creating and recreating. That's why we strive, Adam, to always create things, whether it's art, music, procreating, in a garden, however you want. We strive to create, we strive to explore. And I think our essence, that's part of our essence, our DNA. I think our essence is that, as it plays itself out in countless, numerous incarnations that we can't fathom with a 3D mind.
I agree. There must be a yin and yang, no doubt. Balance has to be there. I think in religion, I think people, I don't attack religion. I really don't. I just personally, and this is just me, I have a tough time subscribing to things I could tell are fables, right? But on the flip side, how many people out there don't kill other people because of the literature in those books, Right. Like, I could understand completely why there would be this level of need for control, because there's legit people out there that don't kill people because they don't want to go to prison, I say this a lot. Religion's a good thing until you get like a psychopath at the helm who's very charismatic. That guy can control the globe, or
a part of it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary business is taking place in that matter. As far as, and what you're saying about the Matrix too, it's the way I look at the body now. I mean, before this podcast started, I thought when you died, that was it. Game over. Computer turned off. But there's definitely an energy inside of us. And you kind of look at it like now, or at least I look at it anyway, like our body's an avatar here on this planet, and the energy is really who we are.
Look at the movie Avatar. I know they just switched the consciousness into those different,
Right.
bodies. I mean, there's a lot to this. That's why I say in my book, science fiction is always ahead of the game. I think Arthur C. Clarke said it best. Today's magic is tomorrow's science.
Yep.
And then Einstein always said, I think he said something along the lines of religion without science is lame, and science without religion or spirituality is blind. I think the metaphysical takes both into account, and science is just a way to try to explain what we call the metaphysical, which other people have put in the guise of religion or beliefs and things like that before. That's why I said earlier, perhaps UFOs and that type of thing have been exploited by different organizations for a long, long time.
I agree. There's a statement too. I like the way it came out. Everything today's science is just an imitation of creation, right? Of imagination.
Absolutely.
All of it.
That's why we strive. That's our internal DNA, to create and explore. Because it's like a blood cell. 500 years ago, what could you tell about a blood cell? It was red. Or what could you tell about blood? It was red. Now you get a drop of blood, you can tell everything about the person's genetics, etc. Well, maybe that energy, in a similar relative way, is kind of like that blood cell. And the more we find out about this energy, whether you want to call it the subconscious mind, subspace mind, soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is part of that bigger program. Like the red drop blood cell can tell you a lot. Maybe this can tell you a lot about a neural network, a network of consciousness that's all inclusive of everywhere and everywhen.
Agreed.
And we call it God, if you want, or source. And we're all connected to it in one way or another.
I agree. I think, that's along the line I'm thinking. There's definitely an energy, an architect as a source. I watch a lot of documentaries, revolving around space and the universe, and there's undoubtedly many Earths out there. And here's what people don't get. We have identified a lot of exoplanets, a lot. I mean, something like millions so far, right?
Sure.
And so we can't actually see these things. I think people don't understand this. We have these expensive telescopes, and they're only there to kind of get the data surrounding that planet, like what kind of gases are around it, but we can't see it itself. I mean, for all we know.
Right. Let me interject real quick with astronomy, because I'm somewhat versed in that. When people look for planets, they don't really see the planets even out of those powerful telescopes. What they see is actual shadows of dots going by these suns, which are always much larger. And if the dot or the shadow is large enough and the timing is right, then it's considered a planet.
Right. And when they say rocky surface gas giants, they're basing that on our solar system and the distance from the sun. With the exception of certain gas giants where they can get a reading from it. Again, the data surrounding it is gas. But the point I make is some of these exoplanets could have primitive life on it.
Sure, or advanced life.
I mean, advanced at their side. Because try to understand. Here we are on Earth. We've been broadcasting for about 100 plus years, give or take. It roughly takes 100,000 years for a radio wave to cross the Milky Way. Now, if you have exoplanets on the other side of the Milky Way, and they're equivalent to us as far as intelligence goes, we're not going to hear from one another for a long time, quite a real long time, And I'm not trying to discourage people and get sad, but that's just a reality.
It is, but if a planet is more evolved than we are and they use physics and wormholes, they can go to different points and come out next to Mars and say, okay, we've got these guys picking up the radio waves from this place. We'll just take it back to that wormhole. We know that this place is evolving to a certain level of technology. We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and I'm just basing this on, the way I'm approaching this, because this is for people, and I've had arguments all the time with people, especially relatives of mine that are very religious, is that make room for the idea that there's us equivalent. There's also some out there, they're in the Bronze Age, they're in the Stone Age, and even the super advanced one. Let's say there's one that's 5,000 years more advanced. I'm not going to use the idea of wormholes. We're not going to use the idea of them, jumping space-time. We're just going to say it's us, but with like 5,000 years on us and with technology. Even then, the radio waves that we broadcasted still have not reached there. 100,000 years people got to make room for. So the possibility of life equivalent to us, below us, or advanced to us is very great. It's extremely great. We just lack the technology right now to identify it. We will, however, get to that soon.
And physics is one thing that will be changing.
Right.
That. And it already has. It's just not in a lot of mainstream. And I'm not so sure it should be in mainstream, because we're not, we are kind of violent by nature, Adam. I think I talked about this before. Yeah. I do understand. I try to be objective, both sides. And, maybe these energies are just not yet to be put out because we have problems with things like gun laws and things like that. What if some of these other technologies were out there? We might self-destruct. I think our big brothers know that, and I think some of our leaders and some of the ops programs know that. And then I think there's other reasons why it's not kept, and for good or bad, from the general populace as well. But we are changing. We are advancing. I mean, 200 years ago, we were still using horse and buggies, and look at how far we've gone now. And we were using horse and buggies for thousands of years. So we've progressed very fast. We don't live a long period of time like perhaps some more advanced societies do, but we live longer than we used to. But we, in my opinion, probably maybe in the galactic school of things, we are progressing quite fast, even though we might only still be in grade school, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought too. The advancements in technology in just my lifetime, crazy. Our technology is evolved at a rate that's it's staggering. Yet we haven't changed. I remember being in middle school saying, I don't think racism is even going to be a thing when I'm older. I don't even think that. I remember saying, I think people are going to recognize religion and politics for what they are. By the time I'm older, we're going to be more of a better society. And here it is. I'm older. I'm like, shit, we're exactly the same as we were. The only difference between then and now is now we have social media to not only deliver our messages of either good or bad, but instantly, and have people lining up behind one another and picking sides. And it's gotten worse because of, look, social media is a good thing, but we got to see exactly how bad it could be. I mean,
Yeah, it's like any other tool. It depends on it depends. It's never the tool or the inanimate object. It's always the intent
of
behind
course,
it
yeah.
and who's behind it. I think we have progressed in some areas. I mean, you could go to a college campus now and you've got everybody working together there, whether it's Indian, Asian,
Yeah.
African American, white. I mean, they will work together now where 50, 70 years ago, that was unheard of. I believe maybe it's more deliberate, the separation now, intentionally here and there. People just have to maybe wise up to it. But I do believe people are wising up to a lot of things.
I hope.
And don't get me wrong, it's still there. You are right, Adam, and maybe it's there for a reason. But I do think people as a whole are getting a little bit better. But you're right, it's still there, and it's even more intense now sometimes because you can see it's there more so readily now because of the social media than you could before.
It scares me. I was talking to my brother today, just this afternoon, about this. And we were, I told him I was starting up the podcast. I took a break. I just did one with Elric. I'm doing with you. And he's like, what have you learned? And I said, I've learned a lot. He goes, but unfortunately, and he goes, well, because my brother's a psychologist, and his questions are like, you think we're going to hear from them directly anytime soon? And the answer is no. There's no way. We're going to learn more. I think over the next decade, disclosure, quote unquote disclosure, we're going to get a lot of it. But as far as communicating directly with another species, I don't know. I don't think so. We can't communicate with each other. There's no doubt UFOs are real. What's behind this? What's controlling them? We still don't know that. And will they reveal themselves? I don't think personally, I don't think they will. I don't think until we start behaving like a species, and I don't know, like, it's hard to say not have war, because humans we're war, period. That's from the dawn of us till our demise. We're just a war species.
No argument there.
Yeah. But someone else brought another thing to my, like the attention, the whole thing with UFOs going around the nuclear sites. Now, I don't want people to be confused about this. If they do prevent nuclear war, if they prevent it,
they may have already done it.
Perhaps. But the reason I say, I think, so here's how I do this. Like, in my imagination, Tony's in his house, and he's got his ant farm in his house, right? And he's watching them evolve. It's really an amazing thing. They're like, oh my God, they're making cars. And one day Tony's in the kitchen making coffee, and you see this bright light, and you turn around, and 1/3 of the ant farm has been just melted because they've learned how to harness greater weapons.
Right.
So now rewind time to what America, we dropped our 2 bombs in Japan, and so the ant farm, they're like, holy shit, what just happened in there? And so now that we got to monitor this. Like, they're making this power, and we want to watch them evolve naturally, not get involved, but we got to watch this, because this is it's our entertainment, it's our project, we care about our pets, etc. So I think people understand is if they're going to prevent nuclear war, it's not because they care about us. It's not. There's no love there. This is a highly advanced species that's studying us, also driving entertainment from us. Because let's be honest, we're entertaining. I think their only motivation for the stopping a nuclear is so they don't ruin the study. They don't lose the study. They don't lose their National Geographic's channel, the Earth channel. They don't lose it. That's their motivation.
They may also be invested in us in terms of DNA and
Could be.
partial processes, in terms of what we can contain and what they can derive from us. There might be a property type of thing with that as well. I remember meeting Jim Sparks at a couple different conferences, and he felt that idea has merit to it, that we're kind of like a farm, like you said earlier. But, a farm never wants to lose its totality in stock,
right?
Because it needs it to sustain its own reservoir, so to speak, its own way of life. And maybe we store things and have things in certain ways that can be contributions to others as well, let alone ourselves. I think Also, Adam, there's no question in my mind as I've studied this, as well as I could and came to different conclusions. And it is the yin and yang thing, but there's also time travel involved and dimensions. And that those things are, and they might be one and the same in some senses, because some people say time is the fourth dimension in science, but there's also that aspect of it, and there may be timelines that we have multiple incarnations of ourselves going on simultaneously on different Earths. I mean, there's a lot of things. This is so complex.
It really is, and I'm glad you said that. I'll tell you why.
But it's still source playing itself out, in my opinion. There's not a beginning or an end, because that's how we think in time and space. Point A to point B, there is an energy. It is omnipresent. It always has been, is, and will be. It divvies itself up, plays itself out, and it needs all the rainbow effect and the yin and yang, the positive, the negative, etc., for anything to be anything.
And I'm glad you said that, Tony, because I sat down one night and thought to myself exactly what got us on this subject matter. If a higher intelligence here, there's and I don't even want to say alien, just a species that's observing us anyway. By now, they have our DNA and the DNA of everything on this planet in a storage unit somewhere. And when you think about the idea of there being another Earth, whether it be parallels or other Earth-like planets, the number is infinite. It's an infinite number. And so if they're capable of traveling the way they are, whether it be interdimensional or space-time continuum or however they do it, whatever it may be, they could take every bit of DNA, every little thing from here. They probably have like an ark, if you would,
exactly,
and replicate it elsewhere.
Noah's Ark, and
and replicate it elsewhere with no
Absolutely.
issue. So the study here, and that's why people here at Earth need to realize how precious life is. Even if there is a sophisticated, heavenly, or an angelical thing out there watching you, if you destroy here, that's that. This here could be replicated elsewhere, believe it or not. But if you destroy here, that's your shot. That's our shot. It's over.
Right.
So that's the importance of that. And so I try to stress to people this. I say this all the time. Like, everyone's had a pet they loved, and everyone's lost that pet they loved. We're talking pet. The heartbreak of that, because you can never get that pet back. You do everything you can to take care of that pet. Because when that pet's gone, you appreciate it. Once it's gone, you're sad by it. Now, look at, and there's a song by it's called Porno for Pyros. I say it a lot. Perry Farrell. The song's called Pets. And it's basically about us being pets to a higher species. But long story short, if they're here this long and observing us, there's got to be, I don't want to say love. There's got to be some
codependency, needy type of love.
Right.
Love in an unconditional way of giving and creating.
So like an affection for your pet. Right. I've even heard scientists say this about, like, how many scientists in the past worked in laboratories and letting animals out. Like, I just became so attached. But the point I make is, it's not their lost. I mean, if we perish tomorrow, there's infinite planets out there. Now, whether it be infinite planet Earth as we see it, or parallel timelines, or just exoplanets. But the idea is, if we look at the vastness, and it's infinite, there's the possibilities are way out of the realm of even the way I could perceive it, let alone us as a whole. I mean, I don't know, Tony.
There's some beings out there that are so evolved that they're group consciousness. They could duplicate the DNA aspect of our existence and physicality, download the consciousness, flop it into another container, and there you go. I mean, it's the possibilities are endless when you're talking about a universal creative source and how it divvies itself out, and how the other aspects of ourselves gain in consciousness and gain in understanding in time, space, physics, etc., and how we other aspects thereof go about creating, exploring, and recreating, as that essence is in them just as it is in us, is because it's part of all the encompassing, omnipresent, universal source.
Agreed. And that even with the paranormal, I think I'm starting to think anyway that we're an energy, right? When you die from this planet, it's hard for me to believe that some of the things that we see are, I think the energy of a loved one can utilize your mind. In other words, infiltrate the circuitry of your brain to let you see who it is. But I don't think we can. Yeah. I don't think ghosts have a physical. I don't think they wear shoes post death. They're leaving the body, the energy, right? They're just
Right.
conveying a message to you that that's who it is and that's what they look like. But
Right. And that's how we interpret it.
right, it's a percent. So it's how we perceive. And now, but then there's this other thing too. What if Earth, and what if the possibility is that we live in these parallels that, let's say, and I've spoken this to people before, now a bell rang the other day. What if possible you're at a haunted location and because of something in the ground there or something like, certain materials could be in the ground, like metals, and cause a magnetic, because this stems from the skinwalker thing. And they're discovering now that there's water underneath it and then there's these metals and it's making like this magnetic electro thing going. So
magnetics can change things in physics.
Right. So that being said, you're in this place that you perceive to be haunted, but how do you know you're not haunting them by going in there? Because it's that location and it's bridging the gap between two existences. And you're in there with your tools and you're like, are you here? And then you're essentially harassing someone alive in a parallel. So
I don't know as much about like some of your guests that you've had on in terms of ghosts and apparitions and things like that. You've had some really super guests with that. All I can say is it is an energy. Maybe some of it's a residue. Maybe some of it is caught at different times and you can see different things in different locations. Heck, somebody might even get a glimpse of a dinosaur at one time or an image of it. And yet they're just going through a time-space continuum where a warp goes by in an energy field and they just happen to catch it and they see it. And I think UFOs are like that as well. I think they come sometimes from different times. I think sometimes when people see UFOs and then they see them in the same space again 40 years later, it could be the same UFO doing a time jump, and yet it's reported at two different times and close to the same location. I think there's a lot more to this, especially when you get into the science and physics and dimensions and the
I mean, there could be something anomalous
in black projects as well.
Yeah, there could be something anomalous in the geography of that area.
Absolutely.
I mean, so the point I make, Tony, and this year coming, it's I'm going to be not overly invasive, aggressive towards guests per se, but the subject matter. I want to be more in detail, more in depth. I want to. Now I've spent a year, absorbing and forming opinions, and I've had my theories and hypotheses. But now I want to get to the meat and potatoes because I want to. Eventually, I was supposed to go this summer, at least begin doing a documentary, but I didn't know where to begin. I didn't have a structure, and I think this year I'm going to develop a structure because I really want to get out on the road and record and investigate. But I want to do it the right way. I don't want to. In other words, I don't want to get there and record for hours and just and I'll have fun. No question. I'm going to have a blast, but I don't want it to be just fun. I want to get out there and find stuff. So that's
Adam, that's the right way to look at it. Have fun with it, in my humble opinion. Be at peace with it. Don't stress about it because, once you try to explain the universal creative source and put that in a box, then you've fallen victim to some type of program. Just be open-minded yet peaceful. Take your breaks, bring the data in, let the data come to you, like I explained in remote viewing. Don't try to get control of it or a heads up of it or try to explain it. Kind of just let it come to you. Just be open to it, and then just let your higher self make and take out of it what it can and converse it on into your physical existence. And just, enjoy what you're doing and yet try to be at peace with yourself. Like all your people, we all have our challenges. We all have, jobs. We all have families. We all have pets. We all have these things going on, health issues. But, in the end, maybe it's all part of a bigger picture and that you just try to make the best of it and just gain that peace, that awareness, and kind of, get an intuitive aspect of yourself, connecting to whatever you want to call it, the source, whether it's prayer, meditation, whatever people need to do to avoid overstressing about every single thing, because those things are always going to be there. But try to make time, like you took time off this past summer during the course of and getting back into playing pool. Everybody take time to be at some point peace, at some point joyful, laughing, and yet still know all these things and these challenges are going on. Because if you try to change everything, there's that old saying, yesterday I thought I was very smart and that I could change the world. Today I'm much wiser and know I can just change myself.
It's the best way to say it because, it starts with us. That's literally and when I say changing the world, it really does start with the individual right then and there. That's the best way to say it. Tony, before we close out, remind everyone where they can find you via and I'm going to put in description, but just emails and websites, so if there's any questions.
Yes, thank you, Adam. Yeah, we just want to take a look. You and I are going to host a remote viewing workshop, hopefully for 3 consecutive weeks, starting November 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th. You said those are Thursdays, right?
Yep.
From 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, people can learn basic scientific remote viewing, the first 3 phases, and you'll be along with them and learning it side by side with me as I teach it. And they can go to www.learnremoteviewing.net. We're going to try to shoot for, a few different people to get involved with this, maybe up to 6 or 7. It's going to be a discount on the price soon. As we get closer to this, we'll have that exact information so people can sign up and come aboard. And it'll be great for them to, we talked about all here today, exploring consciousness, awareness, cognitive ability, increasing memory, focus, recall, intuition, noticing more synchronicity. Just something for people to get actively involved with. I think most everybody that I teach this to or that learns it likes it, and they can see differences in their day-to-day life. It's not, life-changing or anything like that, but it's like an exercise program for your mind, your consciousness, and it helps you become more aware of who and what you are and connected to.
Excellent. All right. Well, for everyone listening, if it's day, night, whatever it is for you, we'll say good whatever. And I'm going to talk to Tony in post, so we're going to say good whatever to you.
Thank you, everybody.